Life is like a box of chocolates, but for some people, it's more like a box of costume options. When you start a new fantasy game, what class do you pick? The wizard, the warrior, or the thief? What if you could pick the dragon? Last week, we looked into deep, dark dungeons, so this week, we're emerging from those tunnels away from those dark forces into more comfortable abodes where we can level up, chat and trade, and maybe play a board game. Role-playing as a cat who is allergic to itself is culturally effed. When we play certain video games, we're often given a chance to build an identity from scratch. We can choose the race, the gender, the height, and the skill set to ready ourselves to jump into any imaginary world. We can choose to be an orc who writes poetry, or an elf with dwarfism, or a wizard who casts spells with paperwork, a bureaucromancer. So why did the game developers put in these options to be a spice-peddling Kadjit, or a battle-hardy Tauren, or a stuck-up noble avian who has a phobia of eggplants? In role-playing, you can be anything within the limits of the game you're playing and what the game master is allowing. And with massive multiplayer online games and video game RPGs, you can have fewer options, but still lots to play with. In the furry fandom, you have infinite possibilities limited only by your imagination. Choosing an animalish character does not indicate the player is furry. Players want to immerse themselves into the shoes of another, so why not someone who's a different gender, race, or even species? Let's not forget that these selection choices often have benefits, like Argonians can breathe underwater, and Taurens are herb specialists. We talked in the past about furries and RPGs in our episode on the internet. The Fursona evolved out of these character selection options for these games and eventually became its own unique thing. Games gave us the option to create these multi-species races, and it was furries who really grabbed onto this and created our own awesome thing, growing it larger past the boundaries of a text-based browser or even a massive multiplayer game. We can assume that these traditional fantasy and sci-fi settings were inspired by old pulpy novels from the early 19th century, which pulled from myth and so on. So if we look for the why there are so many anthro choices in these games, it goes all the way back to the concepts we explored in the first few episodes of Culturally Effed. Big games like World of Warcraft or even open world simulations like Second Life all stem from the early mucks and muds we discussed in previous episodes. They all have the same basic principles. I used to play RPGs, but then I got an arrow in the knee. Most of these games have 2 or more options for anthro characters. Some live-action role-playing games have a general other animal category for whatever the player wants to be. Others have specific bird, cat, werewolf, or some other animal species. One of the more popular and successful LARP groups in the Greater Toronto Area, Underworld, have 6 options for bestial races. Each of them have complex history, different languages, and cultures to build a character from. IMVU, Furcadia, and Second Life are all examples of graphic chat rooms with roleplay-like themes, with a special focus on personalization of your avatar, costing real-world money to add further customization. The Fursona is the representation of someone, usually used for online purposes. These days, it's probably less of the case. Furries who get involved because of the artwork or social aspects will have a completely different approach to character creation than gamers. You don't really have a series of sliders for generating your character in the furry fandom, but you can go on Second Life or IMVU and play with a lot of sliders, or use something like FaceRig and upload a rendering that will match your facial movements. Role-playing plays a massive role in the fandom. Furries have a unique language surrounding their personas, usually when engaging in text-based online chat. Or even in real life, they'll give little mews or barks instead of just saying hi like a normal person. I think it actually might be a sore spot for some people outside the fandom, since when they encounter a furry in a public room, and the furry is role-playing as their sona, it can be a little off-putting and unexpected to outsiders. Role-playing factors into a large part of the furry lifestyle, too. People will take elements of their persona and bridge them into their real life when talking to other furries. Or they just think puppies are cute. The majority of furries aren't wolves or foxes. They're actually hybrid species. Like what a second generation would look like in a world where animal people could suddenly interbreed between species. Though, wolves, cats, and foxes are really close behind hybrid animals. Presumably they're all hybrids of cats, wolves, and foxes.
Where do raccoons come in?
I don't know, down the line. Still more popular than birds. What do you think? Did the Fursona originate out of roleplay games? Tell us the characters you make in RPGs down in the comments. Culturally Left this week was brought to you by the level 50 ghost of Gary Gygax. I will use my initiative to thank these players for playing today. If you have an idea for a future episode of Culturally Left, please let us know down in the comments. If you like what we do here at Culturally Left, please let us know by hitting the like button and the subscribe button and sharing it with all of your friends. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and all of the other websites at Culturally Left. Thanks for watching. This week we talked about how role-playing shaped the Fursona and made it a part of what makes the furry community so unique. In the next episode of Culturally Left, we'll look at the community itself. Why do we go to conventions, and why did we move in together? Find out next time.